All right. So in our last video, we talked a lot about mapping and where people are and all of that. And hopefully I laid down a pretty good foundation as to how involved it can be on the other side of the curtain. Trust me, as involved as it appears, it's by far 10 times that. It is an actual world behind the curtain. So it raises the question, how do you approach this? How do you even get started? I have found that, and we're calling this video the game plan or our approach. I have found that marathon sessions work by far better than scheduled sessions. I will not do a session unless it's an emergency when somebody catches me at lunch or something like that. I will not do a session under 2 hours. For this reason, almost 100% of the time, there is a self-sabotaging personality somewhere within the system. It was explained to me like this, and this was from where I get all my good information, from Alter Personalities Behind the Curtain. It was explained to me like this. Well, Keith, when we go see that guy, yeah, we're there for an hour. And yeah, we play along. I mean, he wants to play head games. Well, we live there, you know. And yeah, he really thinks he's doing some good because we let him meet one or two of us, and then we tell him what we do, and that's good enough. But we don't care because I don't think the guy really knows what he's doing. Okay, number one thing from that statement. If they don't have the confidence that you know what you're doing, why would they work with you? Sometimes the reason why they work with you is because you're all they got. Well, in this case, yeah, you may be all you got, but by the time we're done here, you're going to be what they need. Okay? So the other reason is in a week, there are 168 hours. In the last video, I mentioned that they don't operate under the same principles of time and space. So there is somebody doing something 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if that is a self-saboteur working against you, and you have an hour, or in some cases, a 50-minute hour, seeing a therapist, for that 1 hour, you've got somebody who has 167 hours to be undoing everything that you did. So if you played the odds, you could say you have a 1 in 167% chance, or odds, chance of healing. Except it's worse than that. Because not only are you looking at 1 in 167, you're looking at 1 in 167 times the number of saboteur personalities in there that want to undo everything that you've done. And then if you believe in synergy, when they all start working together, well, you can see the problem. And quite honestly, if a person can heal from this at all, using conventional means, I think that's amazing. Knowing what I know now, if I would have known back then, I'm not sure that I would have even continued. Sometimes it's a good thing that you don't know something, because I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that it was impossible to do what I'm doing. I just figured that just because nobody's has figured it out doesn't mean that it can't be figured out. And I also believed in a scripture that said, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who will give it to all men liberally. And upbraideth, which means hold back, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. And I felt like if anybody lacked wisdom, I did. And if anybody needed it, it was me. And if anybody was entitled to it, well, I was entitled to it because my intentions were pure. I simply wanted to help my wife heal. So, self-saboteurs, 167 hours to 1. There's another reason why you want to do marathon sessions. So let me give you a picture, an idea as to what marathon sessions look like. When I was traveling to my clients, and we found that it was easier for me to travel to them than it was for them to come see me. But when I was traveling to my clients, we would have breakfast and we would get started right away. Sometimes we would work right through lunch. And that's another thing you might want to be aware of is to them, lunch doesn't mean anything usually. All they have to do is switch personalities and they're good to go again. So sometimes we'd work right through lunch. Sometimes I'd grab something, and you would work clear up to dinner time. Then you do need to take a break. And after dinner, usually you have a little bit of cleanup to do from some of the processes that we put in place. And you'll understand that here in further videos. That's a marathon session all day. Do that 6 days a week. If you can do that, well, then you can help a person heal who is out of control. You can help them heal completely within a week to sometimes a week and a half. And in fact, there have been many, many times when we would be through it, not finished with it, but in the middle of everything, where we concluded that it would be in the best interest of the system if we just held off for a few months to allow the person to get used to a new way of being. Because when we're done healing, the person is quite literally a new person, a new way of being. And the way they coped with the world beforehand is no longer. However, and this is the best analogy I have come up with, life is kind of like having a bicycle. And when you're knocked off the bike early on in life, it doesn't mean you don't have the bike. It just means that you're not riding it anymore. And some people get knocked off before they even have a chance to learn how to ride the bike. And so you can walk that bike. You can actually set things on it. And some people, they put a foot on the pedal and they go a little bit. And depending on who's forward, that's how balanced the bike is. When we're done, you'll actually be able to ride the bike and pedal and be balanced. Now, what that means is there's going to be times when you're going to lose control and the bike's going to crash and you're going to skin your knee, but you'll be able to get back up and get back on the bike and move forward in life. And when you've learned how to ride the bike, now all of a sudden dealing with and handling life is so much easier. When I get a phone call from somebody who has recently been quickened, and that's a term that we'll get to later. It means completely integrated. One of the questions that I have is, so how's that bike riding coming along? And they'll chuckle a little bit and they'll say, oh, you know what? Yeah, this has happened to me. That's happened to me. And I will often ask, and how is it different now compared to before? And almost without fail, they say, oh, well, I'm in control now. And it's so much better. Yeah, I've had to learn new coping skills, but oh yeah, life is so much better. That's what we are trying to achieve. So the game plan is marathon sessions. And the very first thing that I start with in a session, and it doesn't matter where I'm at. Believe it or not, I've had people come to me while I was sitting in the park, and without realizing it, we were in the middle of a session within moments because they were ready and they knew who I was. early on when I started doing this for other people, I I was a nobody. I was unknown, and people would come to me, and I wouldn't realize that there was even a curtain, let alone a world behind the curtain. And I was just practicing as a rapid eye technician, which rapid eye therapy is a technique for helping people release unwanted emotion. And in the middle of a session, it would become obviously clear that they had alter personalities, and we were able to work with them. And I learned early on that this situation is much more prevalent than what people realize. I also learned that it doesn't matter where they are on the continuum of dissociation, that the techniques and the knowledge that I had gained to help somebody who is completely out of control apply all the way across the board. And we'll get into that in this video. Now it's a lot easier, actually, because the phone calls I used to get were, hey, Mr. Redford, and I'd have to say, it's just Keith. Hey, listen, can you help me? I've got some emotional issues I'd like to resolve, and I need some help with that. I'd say, sure, I'm happy to help you. And then we'd set up at a time, and we'd do rapid eye and move from there. Now the phone calls are, hey, Keith, hey, listen, so-and-so referred me to you, and I just got to tell you right now that I've got splits, and I've got alters, and I'm not sure who's there, but they want to talk to you. Is that okay? Why, sure. And now, because it's put out on the grid that I know how to do this, I have had people literally from across the pond, from Europe and from Costa Rica and Puerto Rico and all over the United States call me and come and see me because I am able to help them. So when the word gets out that you're able to help in this regard, don't be surprised if the area code that shows up on your phone is something that you're not familiar with. Usually in my office where I prefer, when I did have an office. Oh, by the way, because I get those phone calls even today, part of my intention as to why I am doing these videos and trying to help train as many people as possible is because I want you to get those phone calls. As a therapist, I'm limited to just me. And I'm sure that on occasion I will help somebody when I feel moved upon and prompted to do so. But my intention is to create a group, an army, if you will, of therapists that can actually go out and do the work that I used to do. And I have faith that you're going to be able to do so much better, so much more than me. When I have them in a comfortable setting, I take out a piece of paper. I'm going to use a whiteboard here. And if you've seen the free videos that are on YouTube, I've drawn this before. And I'm going to present it to you very similar to how I present it with a client. This diagram is so important for so many reasons. And I will explain them as I draw. So here's the diagram, and I start out very simply like this. And you're going to want to do it on a piece of copy paper, because when you're done, you're going to give it to your client. That's what I do every single time, because you want them to be able to look at this, because there's going to be so much information on this, and you want it to sink in. So we start out because we have to have a place to start, we go like this. Have to have a place to start, and we're going to make that point right here. We're going to call this the point of origin. What the point of origin is that moment when your mind and your body and your spirit all realize that they exist. Now, sometimes that actually happens before birth. Sometimes it happens at birth. For our purposes here, we're just going to have it at birth. And when that happens, let's put our people up here. At birth, we have an experience, and that experience has an emotional charge. And what happens is the mind is trying to figure this all out, and its key purpose is to keep the mind, body, and spirit safe. And so the body, its key purpose is to process energy. So while the body is crying, the mind is trying to figure out what's going on, and the spirit is just along for the ride. It's here in the body to experience life for its own growth and development. And in further videos, we'll talk about that even more. So what happens with that is you come out of a grounded position and you process that energy, and you process it on a physical level. We do this all the time. When we're stressed, we go for a walk, we cry, we pound it out, we laugh, we do whatever it takes to process that energy so that we can remain grounded. A second example is a situation where we don't have an opportunity to process the energy. At least not at that time. And the best example that I can have for, or that I know for that, is a soldier that is dropped down in a war zone. And there he is. He's either ducking or hiding or shooting or advancing or retreating or doing whatever it takes to survive. Why? Because if he just sits down and cries it out to process that emotion, he'll die. It's not safe. And so with that, we have a certain amount of emotional energy, that is held in reserve, because one law of the universe, I guess, is that energy will be processed somehow and at some time. This is how energy is processed on a mental level. We call that post-traumatic stress disorder. All it is energy that has not been processed from an event that you had no control over, nor did you have an opportunity to process that energy at that time. And so it's held in reserve, and it will eventually be processed somehow. Then you have another situation where you have a person who is born in just a lousy set of circumstances. And we will actually get into why in future videos. But they're just born into a lousy set of circumstances. And they get knocked, the energy hits that mind-body system so hard that the body never has a chance to recover. And the mind is not developed enough to hold that energy in reserve. And so what happens is the mind comes to the spirit and says, hey, look, the body can't process this energy, and I don't know what to do to make us safe. And if it can't process this energy, the ride's over for you. We need you to do something to help us out here. And so what the spirit says is, well, okay, I'll tell you what. I will take, let me do this. So the Spirit says, I'll tell you what, I will take a portion of myself and leave it in the body to keep it alive during this event. And then, when the event is over, what we'll do is we will pull that portion out, which is going to hold that energy outside the body, and we'll put somebody else there. Well, when the Spirit is able to do this one time, doing it again is easy. And doing it again after that is even easier. And it can go on and on and on. And how often? How many times? As many times as is necessary for the mind, the body, and the spirit to survive. This is what we call multiple personality disorder. I think the new name for it is dissociative identity disorder, but you can actually put bipolar disorder, manic depression here. You can put borderline personality disorders. All of the personality disorders fall in that category as well. This is simply processing energy on a spiritual level. Okay? So, physical, mental, and spiritual level. I always ask, and at this point you want to turn the paper to your client. And I say, the techniques necessary to process this are just a good walk in the woods, a good screaming match, whatever. To process this energy here on this level, you're going to need a coach. You're going to need somebody to help you get through it, somebody to help you release the emotional baggage that's associated with it. But processing this area over here takes specialized training. It takes somebody who understands what goes on behind the curtain here. And I use the term behind the curtain because alter personalities recognize that. They know what that means. So I say it takes specialized training to understand what goes on behind the curtain here. Now, the tools and techniques for this aren't enough for here, just like the tools and techniques for this are not enough for here. However, the tools and techniques to help resolve this apply all the way across the board and help everywhere else. It's very important that you say that because behind the curtain, by the time you have drawn this, behind the curtain, you have now got a gathering of personalities who are peeking through the curtain and peeking around the corners because they want to know what's going to happen next. And this is what's going to happen next. Ask this question. You say, looking at this continuum, where do you think you fall on this continuum here? And then be quiet. I have seen this happen, I don't know how many times, where they'll get their finger up and they'll point and they'll say, well, I know I don't have multiple personality disorder. That's silly. And they'll say, I'm probably somewhere over here. And their finger always goes over there. If they do that, that's a pretty good clue. That's a pretty good clue. And most of the time, when they do that, they're a little startled themselves. And the way you handle that is very simple. You say, well, you know what? Well, what I say is this. You know what? Even though I've got a little bit of training over here and I'm familiar with this area, I'm not going to diagnose you. For one, it doesn't matter to me. But why don't we go ahead and use the tools necessary for this and just see what we can do? That is probably the most disalarming approach that I have ever used in how you get things set up and started. Once you do that, hand them the paper and let them study it. Because remember on our mapping, the host is looking at it, yes, but so is everyone else. And the first thing that goes on in their understanding is, wow, finally, somebody gets it. Somebody understands what we're doing back here. What is he going to say next? So that's key. So what do you say next? What I would do is I would lean forward and I would say, okay, first of all, let's just assume that we're talking this far on the continuum. I would like to invite anybody, any part of you, or anyone listening, to hear me out. I have a plan. As soon as you say that, that's going to make your client really nervous if they are not aware of the others in the back. And sometimes the response is, you know what, I feel like there's somebody here. That may be the first time that they are aware of the altars behind the curtain. And you just simply say, that's okay. We'll talk to everybody. And they'll go, well, okay, all right. And if they switch, that's okay too. Whatever happens, it's just going to happen. And your response to it is key at this point. If somebody were to switch on me right there and they were just kind of lost and wondering what's going on, my first thing I would say is, hi, I'm glad you're here. Who are you? And they'll look around, and sometimes they'll scurry back, and sometimes they'll look around, and I'm picking on Kathy today, and they'll simply say, I'm Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Are there others that would like to hear? Yeah. Okay. And then just pause for a minute and try to be kind and understanding. Remember, they have just been discovered, and that might be a little unnerving for some. And for others, they might be just absolutely excited about it, because to have somebody who truly understands what goes on behind the curtain is so unusual and so exciting for them. It's like they're finally being heard. Okay? That is very key and very important, because simply by sitting there and looking them in the eyes and saying, it's okay, or acknowledging that they came forward, simply by doing that, you are building and establishing a level of trust that you can't, that would take a long time to establish. So what you're going to do is, as you're talking and you're inviting anybody to come forward, you're going to watch your client for changes in their energy. A subtle change in the energy. And after you get used to this for a while, you pick it up and you can tell, bam, right away. There's a switch there, or bam, they're co-conscious, somebody else is there. You just pick it up. After a while, you just get to know it. But what you want to do is you want to get everybody who you can to come forward, because you're going to draw them another picture. This is the diagram you're going to draw. This is how I understand what happened behind the curtain. You were born into a body, and somewhere along the line, something happened. When that happened, your spirit split and others were created. Some were created just to hold the feelings, just to hold the emotion. And usually the way that works with that is you'll have one that's holding all this emotional energy, and when it can't hold anymore, another one is created, and that usually comes from here, and so another one's created like this, and then another one is created like this, and another one's created like this, and I taper my voice and I taper the drawing on purpose, okay? Another one's created like this. And they hold anger. Let's just pick an emotion. Anger. Then over here, other situations arrive, and we might need more help. So others are created. In fact, there is one that is created, and we're going to put her in blue. Up here, she's a little bit special. That is the higher self, and the higher self is created to keep contact with deity, keep contact with God. And so we're going to put her just like that right there. And then, of course, anger is not our only emotion. So we have others that are created, and they hold. Notice what I did? That is a pause. That is an intentional pause. They hold. Some of you are doing it right now. They hold, fill in the blank. Sad, sad, sad. Okay. We'll just put sad. And then you might do this. Others are created to hold, and you do a group for each one that your client says. What you're doing when you do that is you're basically putting together a role. And your client, without realizing it, is telling you who is inside and what they're doing and what they hold. And let's back up. Your client is giving you basically a roll call and telling you who's inside and what it is that they hold. This is so important because it's going to save you so much time later. And besides that, nobody wants to be left out. Everybody wants to be recognized. And so if you've got somebody in the back going, hey, don't forget depression. We're back here. And you write down another group that says depression. Now, all of a sudden, what you've done is you said, hey, I got you. I'll take care of you. And so once you've made this list, then the next thing you say is, well, some of these personalities were created in a time and for a purpose that is no longer necessary. And so what we would like to do is help them heal from the energy that they're holding. And when they do, we can go ahead and start joining them together. And these, the way we help them is we help them release anger. And there's ways to do it that's not harmful. And I'll teach you how to do that. And then these, we can help them release sad, and these can release fear. And once this releases the anger, what will happen is is this one here will go bloop right inside that one, and then bloop inside that one, and then so forth until they're back to where they should be, or to where they were from the beginning. If you've explained it like this, by the time you get to this point, everybody here who is an emotion holder is going to look at this and say, yes, I'm happy to give it up. Yes. Those over here whose jobs are no longer necessary, they're looking at that going, yeah, I could use a different job. I'll find something else to do. And some of them, they say, well, I can't give up unless these guys release theirs. So knowing that, then you simply say, and then you know what? Now that this emotion is freed up, we can go ahead and join these together. And I guess we can join these together. And take your time in drawing it and be very deliberate. The reason for that is because behind the curtain, you've got others that are simply sitting there going, I hope he remembers me. I hope he recognizes me. And then I say, and let's see, I guess we can bring these together. Why don't we just bring him down here and bring this one like this? And let's not forget this one. Okay. And then turn the picture around to them and say, now, did we forget anybody? And they'll look at it, and they'll look at it, and they'll always say, oh, what about this one here? Oh, you're right. We don't want to forget her. And so what you do is you take it back. Don't let them see you draw this. It's a lot easier to do with a pen and paper than it is a whiteboard and this. And then you turn it around to them so that they can see it. And they see the big heart. And almost every single time they will look at that, study it, they'll look up at you, they'll smile, they'll nod their head, and they'll say, it's a heart. And you say, yeah, it is. And the power that's going to hold all of this together is right here. Love. And then be quiet. Because what's happening is there's discussions going on behind the curtains. There's a lot of chattering going on. A lot of soul searching. A lot of people are going, yeah, you know what? Finally, somebody gets me. And then somebody's saying, you know what? That's me right there. That's me. He remembered me. He remembered me. And then at a certain point, and you'll know when, you're going to lean forward and you're going to show them the diagram again. And you're going to ask this. Now, did anybody die? No. Did we throw anybody out? No. Did we tell somebody they had to leave and they can't be a part of us? No. Did we tell anybody that they're not important? No. Then just nod and say, that's because everybody is important. In fact, you are so important. Each one of you is so important that if it wasn't for you, she would have died. The system would have been overwhelmed and she would have died. That's how important you are. And if you're that important, we certainly don't want to get rid of anybody. No, we're going to help everybody. And then give them a moment to digest that and to contemplate that. Let them think about that for a minute. Each pause is deliberate because you have to give your client an opportunity to process all of this, first of all, this is a whole new concept. And you have to give them opportunity to process all of this, not just the host, but everybody behind the curtain. And you're going to have some of them back there that just weren't paying attention. And then they're going to notice that there's kind of a conversation going on in the community, and they're going to say, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" Don't let that concern you. You don't have to communicate with everybody up front. But just pause long enough. Don't be in a hurry with this, because you want to give them time to process this. At this point, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, usually you've got them spellbound, and they are waiting for you to basically give them direction as to what to do next. And then you've also got a few things going on behind the curtain where they're still discussing it, and they're a little unsure. And then you've got others that are saying, "Hey, what happened? What happened? Who is this guy? What's going on out there?" Okay, that's the time to take advantage of it. And I usually say something to the effects of, "Is there anybody who would like to talk to me right now?" And then pause. And then no matter who comes forward, talk to them and say, "Yes, how can I help you?" Yes, because 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen is they're going to come forward and they're going to have questions. And some of those questions are going to be, so nobody goes away? No, nobody goes away. Nobody's going to die? No. The number one concern from altars behind the curtain is that they are going to cease to exist. And even though they are in perpetual torment, because that's what they do, that's their job, even though they're in perpetual torment, it's better than non-existence. And they don't understand anything else. You see, they almost died at the point that they were created. And they don't want to go back to that point again. And so when you present them with a plan that says you're going to help them heal and return back to the beginning, somewhere deep within them, and I believe it's an intelligence from the Spirit, somewhere deep within them, they know that that's what they want. But they've got questions, and so they're going to ask questions. One of the obstacles that you're going to have is communication. So how do you solve communication problems? Well, the easiest way is hey, everybody who can hear me, come on forward as close as you can. We don't have to switch positions, but just come on close to where you can hear. And then give them a chance to do that, and then you simply say, "So, who's here?" And let them introduce themselves. And don't be surprised if a protector personality pops forward, and I'll teach you how to deal with them here in just a moment. I've got a list of possible ways of communicating en masse. See, conventional therapy, we would identify each and every personality, write down their names, their age, what they do, and how we can help them on a therapeutic level. You're about to step into doing this on a mass scale. And the way you do that is it's important to know key players, but you don't have to know everybody. In fact, they don't want you to know them. They've been living a life of secrecy now for however long the body has been alive. And they, quite frankly, some of them really don't want to change that. They just want the help. And they just want you to come true on the promise that you just gave them with that heart diagram. So sometimes you have to get a little bit creative on how you communicate. Here's a couple of ideas. When you talk with one, you can ask them, "What is it like behind the curtain with you and in your world? What's the mindscape like?" And it's going to vary everything from, well, it's just shadows and then there's these people just show up, to cities, towns, gardens, just anything that you can conceive in the physical world is present in their world as well. So if you've got a city, I do this frequently. If there's a city, I simply say, "Hey, well, what are they doing?" Well, they're just in their rooms, and that's usually what they do. Well, do they have a television? Yeah, great. Tell you what, is there a television station somewhere? And if there isn't, they'll create one. Yeah, would you be okay if I went to the TV station and made a public announcement? Yeah, that'd be okay. And then you're going to be introduced to the manager of the TV station, and you simply go inside and you the way I've done it is I simply say okay, I'll wait for the cue and you tell me. And it's funny to watch because your client will be sitting in a chair like this, and then they'll go like that. That's your cue. And that's when you say, "Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening programming, but I have a special announcement to make on behalf of the system and everybody within the system. There is a healing process available to where you no longer have to hold on to the negative emotion that you've been holding on to all these years. First of all, the higher self and those in charge would like to thank you for your service to the system. And we would invite you to come to the park where we are setting up a system whereby you can release and let go of the baggage that you're having. And we'll invite everybody to a barbecue, to a big banquet." So we now return you to your regular programming. Feel free to take your suitcases and pack them full of all of the negative emotion that you've got hiding in your closets and in your wardrobes and that sort of thing. And by the way, everybody is at choice. If you do not want to participate, you don't have to. Thank you. And then they'll give me let me know that I'm now off the air. And then you can go ahead and talk with whoever wants to talk with you at that point. And at that point, you really need to get busy, and you need to set up a system where they're going to be able to release their emotion and join the party and then ultimately integrate. That's on another video, how we set that up. But for right now, on communication, be creative. Take advantage of what's there in the mindscape. I don't know how many squirrels and rabbits and birds I've talked to. Mice, I really like mice, especially with satanic ritual abuse, and we'll cover that later. The one that I found the funniest were the Beaver Brothers. Where they said, "There's a couple of beavers here that want to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." Next thing you know, my client's got the buck teeth and go. And I said, "Hi, thank you for coming forward. How can I help you?" And I said, "What'd they say?" "Well, they just wanted to let you know that there are others hiding in their mounds behind the dam, and that they have been busy building dams holding back the emotion. And they're concerned that if we take apart the dams and the emotion floods out, that it's going to get real messy, and it's going to expose those inside their dens that are holding the memories. And we just wanted to make you aware of that. Is there anything you can do?" I said, "Thank you, Beaver Brothers. That's all good information. We will take care of that in a way to where it doesn't get messy and to where your creation will be honored, and we'll be able to help everybody in there." But what about the memories? Well, when we have released all of the negative energy attached to them, the memories won't be important anymore. And then they will just simply be put into like a file cabinet. Does that work for you? Yeah, the brothers say thank you, and they're trusting you, but they just wanted to make you aware of what the situation was. Okay, thank you guys. We'll talk to you later. Yeah, if you have any problems, just go ahead and smack your tails and let me know. Okay. Who wants to talk to me now? It is that easy. Once you're allowed behind the curtain, once you have established a rapport, your problem isn't going to be finding people to talk to. Your problem is going to be working fast enough to help bring relief to all of these personalities. Now, that's not saying that you're not going to have any problems at all. No, you're going to have problems. Probably the first thing that you're going to run against is a protector personality. And protector personalities, with very few exceptions, are usually tough, very tough. And probably the toughest one that I met was a protector named Manson. And that was a 2-hour conversation with just him. My client, this was back when I was still doing Rapid Eye, and my client immediately switched, and out came Manson, and he said, I'm going to call him Jim. He said, "Jim's not here anymore." I said, "Oh, who are you?" "Jim's not here anymore, you puny man." And I said, "Okay, and your name is?" "Jim's not here anymore. I'm in charge, you puny man." I said, "Okay, I can see that. So your name?" "Jim's not here. My name is Manson, you puny man, and I am in charge." I said, "So you're a protector?" "Yes." "Okay. And you're not coming in." "Okay, that's fine. You want to tell me a little bit about your world and what you're protecting and how you operate?" And we started having a conversation. And the funny thing is, I had just printed off a copy of an outline that had a dedication to Jesus Christ in it, and it was sitting on my desk. And I was gearing up for a seminar the next week, and he started berating me, saying that I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know this, didn't know that. And I finally got a little irritated, and I said, "I'll tell you what, Manson." And I got up and walked over to my desk, and I pulled the copy, and I said, "Not only have I read the book, I wrote the book." And I plopped it in his lap. And he glared at me, and he looked at me and looked a little confused. And I said, "Oh, you can't read." And he looked at me, and I said, "That's okay. You're not supposed to read. You're a protector. Tell you what, why don't you get somebody up here who can read, and they can go ahead and read. You stay right behind them. I'll sit over here, and you go ahead and they can read it and give you a book report." He agreed to that, and next thing you know, the whole countenance and the energy in the room shifted, and you had this poor little guy up there reading through it, and moving his lips, mouthing the words, and then finally you could almost see him being yanked back in, and he was yanked back in, and out came Manson, and the first thing he said is, "Do you mean what you wrote?" I said, "Every word of it." Long pause. He said, "He's the only one I can't get out, or I can't keep out." And I said, "Who's that?" "You know." And I looked at my copy, and I recognized what he had just read, and I said, "Oh, you mean?" "Yes. He just walks right by." And I said, "And when he comes in, what does he do?" "He helps the children." "I see. And when does he do this?" when Jim asks for it. I see. I can help those children. Manson said, you can? I said, yes. Let me guess. They cry day and night. And no matter how many times you yell at them, and no matter what you say, and no matter who you send in there, they're still crying. And the only time that they stop crying is when Jesus comes in and takes care of them. You can make them stop crying? I can. I will let you in. And then I said, but I want you to continue to do your job. You are the protector of this system. I want you to keep an eye on me. I want you to make sure that anything that I do within the system is going to help and not harm. Now, Manson, you're on the inside. I'm out here. I can't see all of the results. I'm letting you know right now, my intentions are sincere. My intention is to help Jim, and I need you to keep an eye on me so that if I do anything beyond what I'm suggesting, that you will give me fair warning and stop me. Oh, I'll stop you. I said, okay, fair enough. It's a deal. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And then I did a few little techniques to carry over until the next week. And then I said, Manson, I need Jim to come forward so he can drive home. And will you be here next week? At that time, we weren't doing a marathon session. He said, Jim will be here and I will be here. And everybody will be ready to participate. And I said, now let's do it with a little bit of love, shall we? He says, they will be ready. And I said, okay, thank you. Next week came. Jim, well, I kind of had to explain to Jim what was going on because he had never met Manson before. And so that was kind of a surprise to him. The next week, Manson came right on out as soon as he sat in the chair, and he said, everybody is ready to cooperate. They will cooperate with you fully. I will see to that. And then I had to explain to him about the principle of choice and how they needed to choose in. And him and I worked out a pretty good working relationship. And the fun part about it, as I worked with all the others and did not work with him, that had a greater effect on him than had I worked with him head on. What he eventually did was he came around and he saw the good that was happening in his system. And he saw that Christ was involved every step of the way. That towards the end, he asked to join in with all of the others and to be integrated. And when that happened, it was a spectacular time. So, don't be shy. Don't be afraid of protectors. They will come forward. Sometimes they are a little in your face. But remember that you are protected. Now, obviously, you want to take precautions and make sure that you are safe in your office. I have never, not one time, been assaulted or had my safety threatened by a client or their alters. Not one time. Another type of protector personality is the exact opposite. Those are sleepers. So that when you're working with them, if something comes too close to an experience, if you're triggering something, they will shut the body down. They will literally go to sleep. With them, give them a blanket of light and talk to somebody else who's willing and able to work. And then with that blanket of light, they will be comforted and protected. and they won't even realize the amount of good and the amount of healing that is going on within the system. So that's how you deal with them. Birds are great to work with. Mice, love working with mice. With all of your communication in there, you're going to have a few that are outsiders that don't want to participate, and that's okay. That's okay. The best way to deal with them is to do nothing at all. Because by the time we have processed the negative energy and they see an integration process and how it brings so much light and so much joy and so much peace within the system, actually, the biggest problem that I have is slowing them down, because once they see the massive change in the other altars that do participate, they're raising their hand and they're saying, "How can I do this? Me too, me too." And everybody is rushing the gate, so to speak, because they want their lives changed as well. It is key in your communication that everyone understands that they are at choice. The principle of choice cannot be emphasized enough. They choose into help or into healing, or they don't. Now, here's one objection that is very easy to overcome. And this comes from self-sabotage people or personalities. They come in and they say, "Well, I don't want to do this. I choose not to." You simply say, "That's great if that's your choice." However, let's establish a little bit of a ground rule here. And that ground rule is this: we will honor your choice to not participate. And we ask that in return, you honor their choice to participate. And if you interrupt, well, then we can assume from your interruption that you no longer value your choice to not participate. Deal? Every single time, without fail. I have had them say, "Yeah, okay, I can agree with that. Yeah, okay, I agree with that." And then you move forward. Now, I have mentioned Jesus Christ. I've mentioned the Savior a few times. I come from a religious background. I think I explained that in the first video. And I was amazed at how often Jesus plays a role in the healing process with every person that I have worked with. And I have worked with people who were agnostic, people who were atheists. One that I enjoyed immensely, that I learned so much from, was a Jewish lady. And in fact, she was so anti-Christ that I had a little statue of the Christus on my bookshelf in the corner. And when she would come into her sessions, she would look at that and look at me, and she would ask if I could put a book in front of it. And so I did, and I turned Christ around and put the book in front of it. And what was funny is, as her and I worked, she had personalities that would take her and put her away, place her completely out of the way. So she was not even conscious of anything that was going on. And Christ was prevalent in her healing process. And towards the end, I said, "Well, wait a minute here. What's going to happen when she finds out that Jesus was a part of every step of this?" And I was told by her higher self, who had a personal relationship with Christ on a level that very few people here in this world ever do. I mean, they talked directly like friends. And I asked her, what's going to happen here? And I was told that she was selected to stop the cycle of abuse in her family. And in doing so, this was the results of her dividing. And she would eventually understand the significance of the Savior. And because of her valiant nature, her valiant heart, she would accept Christ eventually. And I was not to judge. I was told, don't judge her and just work with her. I said, okay, all right. And towards the end, she was introduced. She wasn't too excited about it, but she had a much softer attitude towards the Savior. And so the point I'm getting across with this is it doesn't matter what your client's religious upbringing is or whether or lack thereof. I have found that Jesus Christ has been intricately involved in the healing of every one of my clients. And the vast majority of the time, he is there to radiate love and light. And he allows the altar personalities to choose for themselves whether they're going to heal. And as they do, the radiant and the love and the acceptance that they receive from Jesus is so overpowering and so overwhelming that it will heal all wounds. And because of that, those that sit on the outside with the attitude of, well, I'm not going to choose in, when they see the results, even Manson had a change of heart and wanted to choose in. So, whatever your religious beliefs are, that's okay. You have the right to choose. If you don't want to have any religious beliefs at all, that's okay. Because you see, and I've mentioned this before many a time now, what's real to you doesn't matter. You're dealing with the world and the reality behind the curtain. And I can't think of a single time, a single system, a single situation where Christ was not involved in the healing process behind the curtain. They recognize him. They know who he is. They recognize the love that he has for them. It's us on this side of the curtain that sometimes has a hard time relating to that. And if you don't choose in, he's okay with that. It's an invitation, not a mandate. In the next video, we're going to talk about techniques and tricks of the trade, for lack of a better way of saying it, on how we can overcome some objections and how we can resolve some issues. Thank you. See you on the next video.